Hey guys, so I'm here with,
I'm Chris Defeo of CL Visual.
I know Chris probably about 10 years now. We've both been growing our businesses simultaneously, different businesses, but I use Chris he's wrapped my trucks, he does my print, he's made me shirts, sweatshirts, a million different things.
Full gamut. Anything with your logo on it.
Yes,
Yeah,
he's made some logos for us, the construction company and the new glass company, and we just sat down, we talked business, we talked how he got from where he started to where he is today, and you guys should have a listen. So basically, you and I know each other, what, 9 years now?
Yeah,
About
9-10 years,
9-10
right?
years,
It was-
yeah.
Yeah.
So
When did you move into your first West Babylon location?
in 14. Well, 14, 15. It was like January 15.
Yeah, it was
and you
right.
were on Lamar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was right as you were moving in.
Yeah.
Over
But
there.
you were working for another company at the time. We won't mention the name, but
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was working for a company briefly. We became partners, and after we became partners, it kind of
okay. So now
apart.
I like to go as far back as you're comfortable going. Like usually, like during high school. Like, did you start working in high school? Did you have a job? What'd you do? Did you go to college? Like, that's kind of where we start.
So very simply, I started working in, I think, 6th grade.
Okay.
Working at deli, but even as early as, so my first business experience was, I grew up in East Meadow, and there was a little corner luncheonette, little Chinese lady that ran it, made egg sandwiches, all that.
Right.
And they had those little Warhead candies,
Okay.
and they were 5 cents each.
Everyone knows those.
Yep. And I bought, I'm fucking 9 years old or whatever, right? So like, I want some candy, take
Right.
them, bring them to school, and
Right.
somebody's like, oh, I'll give you a quarter for one. I'm like, all right, I do it.
It's made 20 cents.
Yep. And I'm like, shit, I just got 4 free warheads essentially, right? So I go back, they sold smoke bombs there, warheads, like a few things. So
Right.
I bought like a little bucket of them, and I went to school and I sold them all for a quarter each. So, I made like $5 in a day, right? So
Early
at the
entrepreneur.
time, this is 1988, 89 into 90, and you're about my age, so your mom would you'd have your lunch kind of paid for or whatever, and maybe you got like 50 cents or $1 for a snack.
Yeah.
So now people are using their snack money buying warheads instead of the stupid treats that were in the cafeteria.
Right.
And after probably a couple weeks of doing that, there were some other people that I was friends with and, talking in the lunchroom and everything. I wound up getting somebody for each classroom of 5th grade to then distribute for me and sell.
Warheads.
Yeah,
We're talking warheads, nothing
Yes,
illegal here.
and it was all good. I wound up going back at that point
Right.
to her name was Ming's Luncheonette, and I said, listen, I want to buy more of these, but I need a deal.
Yeah.
So I wound up getting them for 3
Who's
cents
your
each.
supplier?
Yeah. I didn't want to cut her out.
Right.
I'm trying to go direct. There was no internet or anything at that time, right?
Right.
But then I wound up working out a deal, getting them for 3 cents each, and then I was getting a lot of them. But it
And
became
how old are you at this time?
9.
I could totally see my son doing that.
Yeah.
I could totally see him doing
Yeah,
it. 'Cause
I think I was 9 years old.
we
at
just
the time.
started with the allowance, and he already has the talks.
Yeah, so 5th grade is when this really kicked in. And there were a couple of little things before that, but in 5th grade I was doing this, and then it started becoming like a little disturbance. So I think my mom got brought in. Hey, your son can't do that, and whatever else.
That must have been an awkward conversation. So what exactly is he selling? Warheads.
Yeah, and then like I kind of said, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna go for it, and I
Right.
started selling smoke bombs and
Oh my
like some other stuff that I could
Okay,
get.
well that could be disturbing.
Yeah,
Like those
so
up
like
in the
after, it
classroom.
got kind of put out at that point.
Yeah. Now, was there a better markup on smoke bombs?
You know what? I paid 25 cents a piece for them. I
Right.
do remember that. It was a 4-pack that came in a little cellophane.
Right.
And yeah, I got pretty good money for those.
That's awesome.
But it wasn't really a better margin per se.
Yeah.
But it was a higher ticket item.
Right.
So like, how many transactions of warheads would I have to do for the same one transaction of smoke bombs?
So something so little and young at a young age as that really
Yeah.
correlates to what we live now.
And being on Facebook and friends from elementary school and everything, they still remember.
That whole thing.
Yeah, that whole thing. I used to, I even did promotion and marketing at that point. I remember I used to bring my boombox to school, and we would go out for lunch, and at the time it was Warrant, Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi. So I would buy these tapes, and I would literally play this music, so people would come around, and I would kind of
You want to work
do
it?
my deals
Right,
then, and kind of market everything.
That's
and,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So that was my first real business experience. I wasn't big on school in general. I was always intelligent with school. I did well on tests, but I never did homework a day in my life.
So you were a good test taker.
Very good test taker.
Okay.
And that actually upset teachers because I literally could not care less about anything
They felt you didn't try
related to school. And I've never done homework a day in my life.
Right.
Ever.
Right. So it just didn't interest you.
It didn't interest me. It was, I see my daughter now. I have a 6-year-old, and I see her in the same path. And at the time, I remember in fifth grade again, we had an assignment to read something. So I go to read a page, and the page just goes blurry on me.
Right.
And at the time, it was go get his eyes checked. Go get my eyes checked. Everything's fine. He's good. He's just being lazy. Now I could see all the signs, especially in my daughter, and looking back, of ADHD, ADD.
Okay.
Some different things like that, which I've since been diagnosed with and helps me understand. But at the time, it was like, oh, your son's just lazy,
Right.
type of thing.
Right.
I kind of get through middle school barely, type of thing. I had to do summer school once or twice, but
Right.
it's one of those things you're not really failing and getting left back.
You know, my wife says that a lot because she's a reading teacher in Lindenhurst. And she says a lot of kids, you think that they're bad kids, but they either have ADHD or ADD.
Yeah,
or whatever.
there's a lot of learning disabilities.
Or sometimes she catches visual issues with kids, and that's why. And then she'll say, "Hey, listen, there's probably a visual issue here."
Yeah.
They go to the doctor, and then it's a totally different kid.
Yeah.
So it's important the teachers see this. Well, I mean, it's hard for the parents, but I would say easy for the teachers to notice that sort of thing. Now.
Yeah, I was always very good with problem solving. I was good with kind of like talking my way out of certain things.
Schmooze.
The personality, kind of being like class clown with stuff got me through a little bit of it because I was always like the teacher's favorite. They were just pissed that I wouldn't do the work. I got into high school and literally I kind of gave up. I went to cabinet making.
So right
Every
out of
morning.
high school, you didn't go to college. You went right into cabinet.
I didn't even graduate high school.
Now, was there a connection, like a family member that you knew to get into cabinet making, or you just?
No, it was always something when I was younger, probably 7, 8 years old. I had an uncle that was a carpenter, and he was doing work at the house that I lived in. I worked with him for like an entire summer, doing a dormer at the house, and now I think about it, I was 7, 8 years old on an old Craftsman chop saw, no safety, no guard.
Right.
He's yelling out measurements. He's like, I need it within an eighth.
Right.
Like that type of thing. And if I was off by more than an eighth, I'd get yelled at.
Right.
And an open roof, essentially, I could pop right off. So now thinking about that, it's like pretty insane.
Yeah.
But that's how I kind of got into a little bit of carpentry stuff. I've always been a tinkerer, working on different things like that. In high school, I loved cabinet making. If I could do anything right now and kind of retire and do whatever I want, I think I would probably set up a cabinet shop.
Right. Okay.
And just build dumb shit.
Right.
All day long.
Right. Yeah, whatever people want.
Yeah.
That's cool.
There'd just be a whole lot of half-finished projects, most likely, but
Yeah.
that's what I would probably do.
That's what it could be.
Yeah. So high school wasn't really that big of a deal to me. I kind of fell off and hung out with some older kids. Went through all the regular high school stuff, but after my second year of high school, I wasn't going. I went to cabinet making, left for the day. My mom was working still at the time.
Oh, really? Now,
So-
did you graduated though?
Nope.
You didn't
Nope,
graduate?
I dropped out after 2 years in high school, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I dropped out. I went to a BOCES program that was like this GED program with BOCES. So I did try that. I wound up kind of dropping out of that also.
Right.
And then I just started working from there. I always worked throughout. I worked at a deli for a few years, and then I had a job at Pathmark at the time, and then like a part-time job. And even before I left high school, I faked working papers. And I don't remember what it was. I think you were only allowed to work
You
like
gotta
10
be
hours a
14,
week
yeah.
at some point. But I faked working papers, and none of the jobs knew about each other. So I was able to essentially work full-time between Pathmark, CVS, and I was still working at a deli part-time. So I just kept
Right.
working throughout. I dropped out.
So
I
you
was just-
thought outside the box, I guess. you'd say.
yeah, and I was just kind of working, with that kind of more like dead end, beginner teenage jobs, and then I got lazy. Something happened around like 17, and I got kind of lazy for a few months. I don't
Easier, like
remember.
discouraged or.
Yeah, I don't know if I lost a job. I don't remember exactly what happened with it, but all of a sudden I was kind of sleeping all the time. I have a sister that's like 15 years younger. She was born when she was little at the time. I had to give up my bedroom for her, so I was sleeping on the couch. And I don't know if I was discouraged. I don't know if it was something subliminal with my mom, something subconscious, like, oh, I'm not getting attention paid to me, whatever it was.
Right.
So I was doing that for a few months, just kind of being lazy, doing nothing. My grandma pretty much raised me. We lived in my grandmother's house.
Right.
And a friend of mine said, "Oh, I got a warehouse job." He was working at a warehouse job. Hey, I could get you a job, and that was at a place called Salesmaster,
Okay.
which was really the beginning of my career in that sense. It was my first kind of real job that was outside of like the regular
Right.
minimum wage stuff.
Right.
I worked in a warehouse, kind of worked my way up through that.
So you started just stocking shelves and
Yeah,
taking in
pulling orders, right?
Right.
So it was a wholesale distributor, similar to you ordering
Right.
from one of your distributors, right?
Right.
So I was pulling orders, loading trucks. Guys would come in also like at the counter sales and pick stuff up. So I'd pull orders for them. Eventually, I wound up working in the counter, like doing kind of a sales thing for them because I started like learning products, and I've always taken great interest in stuff.
Right.
So I want to kind of know everything I can and be an expert in something.
Now, did you take pride in your orders? Like when the order came in, you had to put it together. You to the T?
Absolutely. I would make sure they had everything. Hey, do you need this? Do you need that? Different
Which
stuff.
probably opened the eyes of your managers. And
I'm a tool guy. I love tools, so they sold all these different tools. So the reps would come in, show us stuff. I would show it to the installers, sell things.
right.
And then I became friends with them, and I was working like a regular kind of day shift for a warehouse from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. because we were loading trucks at the end of the night, and working that counter position, and started just becoming familiar with installers, meeting guys, becoming friendly, and asked a couple guys, hey, if you have any work, nights, weekends, I'd love to get into it. There was this guy, Kenny Cluin, passed away a few years ago, but really kind of a mentor to me. He owned a business called Lincoln Carpet, but he did a lot of commercial work, self-leveling work and tile work, big stuff for the state contract work. He was doing IKEA at the time. They were redoing everything there, and I started working nights at IKEA. I lived in East Meadow at the time, so it was easy for Hicksville. And
Now, what were you doing at IQ? Your sales, or you were working
no,
on putting
over
stuff together?
on doing floors, like laminate flooring.
okay, okay.
Pergo at the time is what they kind of put everywhere. So I did all that Pergo in there and worked every night for months while they were renovating.
Right.
Learned a lot. And then just kind of kept going. I was still working my full-time job. I was doing this overnights, weekends, whatever I could. And then I started expanding from there and, getting whatever work I could.
Right.
In the flooring industry. I had this great hook. I could get stuff at a great discount beyond what even somebody in a trade would pay. I get a even better discount than that.
Now, were you interested? Like, did it really pique your interest doing the flooring, or were you kind of like, I'm doing this, I'm kind of just getting through?
Yeah, so it did pique my interest and I enjoyed it. And I think now looking back at it, what was satisfactory to me about that is because it's something that you can go in and do and complete pretty quickly.
Right.
As opposed to kind of what you're doing now with these long-standing projects.
Yes.
A project might be 6 months.
Yeah, waiting for a piece
Once
of
you're
trim,
starting,
piece of tile.
yeah, that kind of stuff.
Tedious.
Yeah, like I lose interest pretty quickly. So I think the quick satisfaction of going into a job, getting it done in a day, finishing it off, big change, clients thrilled, a homeowner, whatever. Oh my God, this is so amazing. And,
Right.
I kind of really enjoy that with it. When it's this long-standing stuff, I don't do nearly as well with it.
Right.
But just started working through there, getting more jobs, going to friends and family. Hey, I'm going to do this. I kind of linked up with somebody else that had experience. He was about 40 years old.
So you started basically a flooring company?
Yeah, a little side gig of doing, carpet and tile and little things like that on the side. Whatever I could, make some extra money.
While still working for the other guy?
Yep, and there was obviously good money in it.
Right.
And then eventually at some point I went into my boss, my VP at the time, and I was doing good, and I knew that I would end up at this company if I continue where I was, and I would do okay. I'll end up in the office making 90 grand, 100 grand a year type of thing.
Right.
And not that I was like opposed to that, but it just wasn't me, and I had to take a chance. And I went into my VP, and I remember saying, I might come back in a couple months begging for a job, but if I don't try this, I will never forgive myself.
Right.
So I'm going to try going out on my own.
took a
I'll
risk.
give you as much time as you need. Work half days, work a few days a week, whatever it is. I won't leave you high and dry. You guys did a lot for
So
me.
you didn't burn a bridge? You took-
Absolutely did not burn a bridge.
Very
I
good.
did.
So-
I wound up burning that bridge years later.
A different situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it was my fault. I still feel terrible about it. But at that point, I absolutely did not. And they were great to me overall. Really, there was a sales guy that was kind of a mentor to me, and I learned a lot from. And even though I was just a warehouse guy, everybody there in the office, the VPs, ownership, all the managers and everything, really treated me like family, like a friend, and it was a really good operation. So I started my flooring business. I kind of went out on my own, 20 years old, I think. I went on out on my own completely. So I don't know what's going to happen. I wound up hiring somebody, working with them, and luckily you could make enough money where even if you didn't work 5 days a week, you could still
Support yourself.
make it work. So I remember when I hired my first guy, I said, I'll guarantee you 3 days of work a week. Should be 5 or 6, but this is what I can guarantee you.
That's the hardest part of a business is hiring someone full time for that. 'Cause you don't have enough work.
It's still the hardest part of the business.
It's still, yeah.
As you start to grow and not knowing where something's going.
You never know where your sweet spot is.
Yeah,
it's
and you have to
constantly
hire before you need it. Right?
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I talk about it a lot, but I want to hear your perspective of that.
So right now, the company that I'm in, we're about 20 people. And we had a lot of rapid growth the past year and a half, 2 years.
Right.
And hiring before you need it is essential because if you hire when you need it, you're always going to be behind.
Right.
So.
Hey, Steve.
How you doing?
I see a little bit. I love him. He will not do a podcast, but we'll talk about that later. That's so everyone's watching that. That's one of my closest mentors. His name is Steve. I won't say his last name because he does not want to do a podcast. So he said he had questionable things in his past. So we're going to leave it at that. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So when you hire somebody, when you get so busy that you absolutely need more help right now, bring somebody in, unless with that 1 in 1,000 chance you're going to get the perfect person that knows what they're doing, that can come in.
Right.
And what you're going to pay for, obviously, or you're going to try to get, but it's got to be that perfect storm. It's not going to happen to get somebody to that level typically. You got to bring somebody in a little bit green, train them. Even if they know what they're doing, you have to train them on how you operate and everything. And it actually slows you down during your busiest time when you're super busy with everything. So.
And you're not making a profit that you should be making because you're paying that to train.
You can piss people off. Right, you can piss off customers because now you're so busy, you have so much going on.
Right.
And so hiring before you need it and anticipating what you're going to need in the future is super important.
Right.
And it's this constant ebb and flow in business, right? So, it started off with me and my partner there, and then you get so busy where you have to hire somebody. Now, I was able to hire somebody, or you get so busy because you're concentrating on operations and everything, and you're doing sales, you're doing operations, production, whatever it might be. And then you hire somebody and now you have a little relief, but all of a sudden you can concentrate on sales a little bit again. Now you concentrate on sales a little bit again, and all of a sudden you're too busy for the 3 people. Right. And you got to hire somebody. Then you get a little relief, and then it's just constant ebb and flow that goes back and forth.
And then there's that like right now it's a 60-degree winter for us, so it's like there's other companies laying off guys left and right, but like you lay them off, then you lose them. So but then it's like, how long do you carry him before you say, oh, we gotta lay somebody off? You know what I mean? Like that's always the hard part,
Yeah.
And then like you'll lay someone off, which I don't think we've ever laid anyone off. Maybe a couple. Usually it's just a clean break, or if anything, we're gonna get rid of somebody, unfortunately. But then like the next week it gets busy.
Every time.
It's just how it goes. Yeah.
It's like those spare parts that you have in the corner.
Yeah.
They've been sitting there for 4 years. You throw them out, you need them 2 days later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. So hiring before you actually need it and anticipating what you're going to need and forecasting is super important. It's difficult to do, but you learn it with experience. And, sometimes you got to dig in and instead of working your 10, 12-hour days, you're working your 14, 16-hour days to cover. Same thing if somebody gets sick.
Right.
Now we're in a position where we try to have a backup for everybody so we don't get ourselves deep into that position. But
now that backup comes at a cost too.
Absolutely.
And
so it's like an insurance policy, right? So we have a backup for everybody.
But why do you think that is? Do you think it's because people are less accountable? Like, did the workforce change from 20 years ago?
Absolutely.
What do you?
Oh,
I would like to hear your perspective on it as well.
I mean, you and I are workers,
right?
We're workers, essentially.
You try not to be the guy to like, hey, get out of the way.
Blue collar type of guys, right? Like we're in a
Yeah.
little bit of a different position now, running businesses, but we're blue collar guys. And if you need to get out there and pull your tools out, you'll do it. If I need to go out there, pull my tools out, I'll do it. Right. But there's a much different mentality. Yeah. And I would say out of 20 people that I've hired, there's 2 of them that came in that I saw that mentality, that old school mentality, hard worker, do whatever it takes, earn their way up, earn their raise, earn their promotion.
Right.
Really.
Now, what's the next hard part with that? If you got 15 guys and you got 2 that are driven, you got to keep that mentality for the two and not have the others infect them. That's I mean,
yeah,
I hate to use the word cancer, but it's cancerous.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so it
It's
starts
one of those
infecting.
things that are difficult to surpass, and you hope it goes the other way around, where the good guys can infect the guys that
Positively.
don't know as much, or
Right.
or a little bit lazier, or see things a little bit different.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have to take people for what they are, and you have to figure it out. You know, you get some good people, and you're happy with your crew, and you know, but hiring is tough. Firing is harder,
Yes.
right? So
Because how many chances do you give someone now? Instead of like 2, 3 chances, you give them 20.
yeah, and I try to, you know, take a perspective and look at the stuff a little further back. I don't, you know, something happens, I'm not flipping out, yelling at somebody, but I do kind of keep that in the bank for
Right.
future stuff. When they ask for something, ask for time off or a little special
Right.
accommodation with something,
Right.
or time for review, raise, whatever. You know, I do keep that in my mind.
Yeah.
But it's tough with where people are mentally these days. They're definitely not as driven. I think everybody wants to start at the top and doesn't expect to have to earn their way up through that. And
That's the whole purpose of this conversation.
yeah,
Is to
that's
show everybody that you don't get, and not even that I consider myself, or you probably don't either, at the top. I'm still climbing.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So I'm 38 years old. I've been working since I'm 14.
yeah,
You know, so I'm still climbing. You know, it's you start at the bottom, you work your way up.
yeah.
You know, and I think that mentality needs to be brought back.
It absolutely does. I don't know if it ever will come back, man. I mean, it's.
We're gonna try.
I can't quote it verbatim, but I know Joe Rogan has this quote about like tough people
I can
creating
never
soft
say
people.
it right, but if you could say it,
you know what I'm
I know
talking about,
exactly what you're
right?
saying, yes.
So I'd love to bring that up. I can't say it right either.
Yeah.
I can't say it verbatim, but
Yeah.
basically, you know, you have this tough generation, and they were so tough, so they're trying to give everything to their children, but they're creating weaker, softer people.
Right.
And those weaker, softer people
Make tough times.
then, you know, run through really tough times, and eventually their kids don't want to go through those tough times, so they become
Strong.
tougher people,
Right.
stronger people, harder people. So now you're getting back to the harder generation,
Right.
and then it's just constant.
I would like to
fluctuation
keep
of
it at like an even somehow, but
Yeah, it's-
I don't know if that'll ever happen.
I don't think it will. I think you're going to constantly deal with this different stuff. You know, it sucks for us that we're dealing with kind of this.
Yeah, but I think we're in a position
Generation.
where like we're at an age where we can make a change, and we're deciding to, you know, with the charity and talking to the kids and whatever else, and you know, we're at that point where like it's like everything's hitting the fan now, and everyone's kind of turning around looking at each other like, you know, this is going to be a problem. Oh, it's not going to be a problem. It is a problem. It's been a problem for
Yeah.
15, 20 years now. Now it's just coming to a head. So, and then even if we do make a change, we're still 10, 15 years out from being.
Yeah, there's nothing that's going to change in 6 months or a year or
No.
anything like that.
No.
But we'll see what happens as, you know, we'll see what happens with the economy. If recession hits again, jobs are harder to get.
Right.
If the government doesn't step in to just kind of give money away for people to sit home, right?
That's
and
a
they
whole
have to
nother
work.
thing. Yeah.
Now that job market's going to be a harder market where you're going to have the ability to pick and choose from a dozen experienced people rather than 2, right? So it's going to create that competition within it, and maybe that will happen.
Right. I think the job market, or whatever we want to call it, was declining, and then this whole COVID thing, I think we jumped like 10 years.
Yeah, especially
With
for the trades in
Keeping
general,
people
right?
home and paying them, and like now it's like really we got to dig ourselves out of this.
Yeah, but I think that also went into something where the mentality changed, and people looked at things as not just hard work. They looked at it where they wanted to have, you know, not so much just the quality of life, but also like their freedom with everything. I have a friend of mine that owns a restaurant. You know, big restaurant, has been around for a long time. Rebranded 6, 7 years ago. Great place, and you know, he's got a nice outdoor patio area. I was there one night with some work people. I went to order a drink on the outside bar, and this girl's just staring at her phone. There's 2 bartenders behind the bar, just kind of, you know, dicking off essentially. Finally,
Oh,
they
the
get to me.
bartenders on the
Yeah,
phone.
horrible service. Like, didn't really care. Kind of threw the drink down. You know, not what you would expect overall. And I was talking to the owner later in the night. I saw him, and you know, I was telling him. I said, "Listen, just to give you a heads up, you know,
Not to
this is
insult
what
them.
happened.
Right.
I want you to be aware as an owner. I don't want this to affect something else. And, you know, restaurants obviously live and die by reviews at this point in time." And he's like, "Chris, any other time in history, I would walk over and fire her right now. He's like, I can't. I'm looking for anything from dishwashers to managers. Like, I'm out there bussing. I'm, bringing drinks out, clearing tables, seeing what people need.
It's amazing.
Even when work came back,
Yeah.
people are like, no, I only want to work 3 days. I'm good. They don't want to take the extra shifts or whatever. He said, this is the way it is now, and it's just much different.
I tell these younger kids I talk to that they should all be working at restaurants. I said, you should all be working at restaurants because you can make great money. And I said, and you can network. Because how many people from restaurant business or the club business or whatever else do you still have connections with to this day?
Yeah, I spent a little bit of time in at a catering hall, starting off valet parking, and then since it was a catering hall, they did events like weddings and Sweet 16s and stuff. I wound up talking to the owners, and I said, "Hey, while these cars are parked, do you need me to do any work during the event?" I wound up bartending, waiting, bussing, whatever. So I kind of double did.
Right.
And the great part was I was working Friday night and all weekend, day party, night party. I had no time to spend my money.
Yeah.
So it was just all savings at that point.
That's so key too, because I think that's saving your money, giving yourself a head start in the early ages is really important.
Yeah, I was really dumb with my money. I wasted it all, but
Yeah.
yeah. But,
You're so honest.
looking back at it, there's a million things I would do different with
Yeah.
that, and even till today,
Yes and no, though, right? Because that's made you who you are. People have that conversation all the time.
I'm lucky that I'm pretty resilient, but I've been up and I've been down quite a few times in my life,
right.
and I feel like I've made enough mistakes where I won't get to that down part and make those crazy mistakes.
Right.
Although I still take risks on things, in business.
Well, if you're not growing, you're dying, right? Is that what they say?
Yeah. Luckily, I have a fantastic partner, and she's kind of operations and makes sense, and
No, that's great.
handles all these things for me.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is your current business?
So
Well, we're going to circle back to that. Sorry. We went off on a tangent of...
we started on it. Yeah.
You're hiring him. I'm
So,
hiring him.
because I know, I'm sorry, that's my fault. So, basically, you have the flooring business, and from the flooring business, you went into...
Yeah. So
print,
so
right?
I basically spent from
how old?
from the year, I would say 2000 up to about 2008 in the flooring business.
Okay.
And I grew very quickly. I did a lot of work, obviously, leading up to that time. It was just right before the recession, right before the housing crash. Everybody's building, everybody's dormering.
Right.
You couldn't not get work overall. But we were doing some nice high-end work, high-end homes, all this stuff. It started kind of falling off with everything. I went off. I was making a lot of money. And then I started starting other businesses with guys. And, at the time, my biggest issue was that at 23, 24, 22, I'm making this money. The people that I'm friends with are not making this money.
Right.
So who do you gravitate to? It's like the people that do kind of make that money. Unfortunately, at that age, it wasn't like this mentor businessman. It was drug dealers, right? Those are the only guys that are making the money I'm making.
Right.
And that's who I wound up hanging out with.
Yeah.
And,
Full circle.
Yeah. So
Warhead days, right back to the
yeah. So although I
They don't
didn't,
call them warheads, though.
although I didn't get into that business, I was kind of
That's good.
as far as going out and spending money and vacations and everything. I was able to keep up with them,
Right.
and they were able to keep up with me, as
Right.
opposed to like my regular friends group where, going out to dinner with a group of people, it was like, oh, I don't,
Split the bill.
yeah, that type of thing. And I turned into a little bit of an asshole. And I remember being at Cafe Bocce in Westbury, and I was out with about 10 of my friends, like regular people that I grew up with. And I decided to pay the bill. And I remember taking out a lot of money, and I'm on top of the table, counting my money. And my girlfriend at the time is like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, put that below the table.
Yeah.
And afterwards, she talked to, she's like, "They don't make that.
Yeah.
You don't." And that's
You're
something
being
that
an arrogant dick.
I'll never ever forget it. It's something that I'm very happy that she did.
Humbling, yeah.
Yeah, it was very humbling with it, and I'm like, well, shit, you're right with that. And to this day, anytime if I take out cash, it's under the table.
That's
and I always
important.
count under the table. Nobody sees.
That's really the best way to put it. That's how I like to receive it, right under the table.
It's such an answer.
Yeah. So getting back to the business, so I spent.
Was it your hat moved to?
Yeah.
We'll finish that thought and Jeff will edit it. Yeah. So now you're hanging out, you're making money, things are good. So this is early 2000s, and then 2008.
Yeah, then, the recession comes, but even before the recession really came with everything and the housing market crashed, which kind of screwed up the flooring business in general,
Right.
I was already dicking off,
Right.
getting into other businesses, invested into an apparel company. Dumb move,
Something you really don't know much about.
Yeah, know
Or you
nothing
didn't know
about.
it then. You should
I
say.
knew I thought at the time I knew how to run a business, and this was kind of it. But you get so excited with everything, and we spent all this time and all this money bringing in inventory, building this website, not realizing that like finally the website went live, and like we have no orders. Like how are people even going to know about this? It was a cool brand and everything, but that was with that drug dealer partner. We've got so I was already kind of falling off and kind of getting out of it, getting bored of what I was doing.
Right.
So I didn't close up the business, but the guys left. I didn't replace them. I was
Right.
still able to do work alone and make decent money when I needed to.
Right.
Kind of took a little
Now, were
siesta.
you doing print? If you were doing apparel, you were doing
This is
print?
before. No, we weren't printing ourselves. We were
So you were just
screen
basically buying it and selling.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So right around that time, I kind of got out of the flooring business. I kind of took like a little break. I went out to California for a few weeks. I stayed out there for a while. Had a few things happen out there that I got into and out of, and different stuff that we could get into, but it's a long, long story with things. But essentially, when I wound up coming back, I kind of didn't have a lot going on. There was somebody that I was using for printing, and he called me and he needed floors for this place he was moving into on Mahan Street, 53 Mahan.
Oh, so you started on this street?
Yeah, I started on Mahan
I
Street
thought it
right
was
here.
Lamar- okay.
Yeah, so we started right
Cutting
here.
ahead.
He
Yeah.
needed flooring. I came in. I put some floor in his office, and it was during like a Christmas break type of thing. I knew a lot of people from the flooring industry. He was having a little bit of a hard time business-wise. I called some people, got some sales for him because I knew purchasing people in hospitals and schools and stuff. And he's like, stay on. And that's how I got into the the printing and marketing business, which I'm in now.
Right.
So that's how I started right in 2008. I think it was the winter leading up right into 2009, perhaps. And then that kind of evolved. But
Right.
to answer your question, that's the business that I'm in now.
So in
I'm in
2000,
printing, marketing, essentially, and divisions of that.
so by 14, 15, when I moved into Cabot Street, you moved into Lamar, or
Yeah, I think we spent a couple years over here, but we were kind of sharing space with somebody that was going belly up.
Okay.
So we decided to get out of there.
That's miserable.
Penske owned the property on Lamar and got a crazy, I've paying like 7,000 square feet. I think we're paying $2,800 a month.
yeah, that was a big building. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was
So-
crazy.
That's this building 7,500.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, it was and stupid cheap for what it was, so it just
good.
made sense to get in there.
Yeah.
There was somebody that was moving out of their bindery business. We took some of his equipment and everything, so it worked out well. But yeah, so I'm in the printing and marketing industry now. We're not conventional printers typically, where we still do the business cards, postcards, and all that.
Right.
But we're really focused on wide format printing and different types of advertising. We don't do websites, we don't do SEO, pay-per-click, any of that digital stuff. That's kind of its own territory that we don't really involve ourselves in.
Right.
Our main business overall, we have a lot of design, so we have a big design department. I think we have 6 designers now, and we do a lot of vehicle wraps, wall wraps, and minor signage. So I don't
You
do.
wrapped my vehicles. You did all logos. You did,
Yeah, we do a lot of design, exterior signage, like electrical stuff. We try not to get too involved in.
Right.
We're not doing a lot of the fabrication in house, so it's something I can't control. I don't really want to get too involved in.
Right.
But vehicle wraps is something that's huge, and especially with the trades. And oddly enough, my biggest clients are HVAC. So as far as the HVAC industry is concerned, with vehicle wraps, I am the biggest supplier of vehicle wraps to the HVAC industry in the country.
in the country.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, which I can't really document that, so I can't particularly prove it, but I know it.
So you're
At
one
this point, yeah. There's not a lot of companies out there doing what we're doing on the scale that we're doing
Right.
with this particular part of the industry.
Now,
So-
what do you? That's for like all. So what do? You send crews out, or you subcontract it out? You make it and you send it.
It varies. So we project manage everything. We bring in all the information
Right.
for everything. Let's say a company like yours decides to do a rebrand. We actually work with a company that's a big branding agency for the HVAC and home service industry.
Right.
And we started doing some stuff for them, not directly for them, but they kind of referred us, hey, I know these guys are good, you should try them out.
Right.
Heard good things. So we started doing stuff quite a few years ago, and we did really well by it. I wound up kind of working that deal out with that owner for referrals and everything. And we get referrals from him, and really we're just really trusted. They don't have to worry about anything. He was having issues with these companies sending their files out to their own printers and always problems and phone calls.
Right.
Meanwhile, the guy that does it, like the design stuff and provides the files, is awesome. He's really great. So we project manage everything. We take in all the information. We have a process for everything where we get all the information. We quote it. If everything goes good, they approve it. Obviously, take payment, and then we get right into proofing and production. We print everything in house, 100%. As far as installation, we have, I want to call them subcontract crews, but really we use the same people pretty consistently. So we have our own crew that we'll send out for certain stuff. I have somebody in Vegas that I work with, somebody in Florida that I work with, and a few other locations that we work with constantly.
Right.
They travel around 2 to 3 weeks a month and do these jobs and just go straight through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest into the HVAC industry now. A lot of guys getting bought. We talk about that a lot.
So from the marketing and perspective of it, and
investment
branding
firms.
perspective, there's a lot of, for residential based home services, there's a lot of disruption in the branding compared to what there used to be.
Right.
So there's a lot of changes that are happening, and with those changes you have now these sales groups and sales coaches and events, even within the HVAC industry. And most of the guys that are kind of coaching are bullshit. You look at it like,
You just want to sell your ticket.
yeah. Some of them care, some of them actually, I would trust, but most of them it's kind of bullshit from what I see.
Right.
But the one thing that does work, and I know that works, is the rebranding and the disruption of the rebranding and wrapping all their vehicles. So we go in and we basically wrap all their vehicles. If you have 30 vehicles, we'll come in there and do it in a week. Send in a crew, we rebrand you, you have your brand announcement, your new shirts, you new this, you new that, get all the stuff and get going on it. And it's shown, data shown over the years with this that it's really increasing sales, and it's not all due to that. Obviously, the company and management and ownership have to be able to handle everything, and they have to have a good business, a good business model, but it will jumpstart them for it.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool situation, kind of how we handle stuff, and we see people that start as maybe a 3, 4, 5 vehicle operation, and we've watched them grow to 50, 60, 70 vehicles.
Wow.
Or we've watched them go from, this company that's doing, maybe 3, 4 million into a company that's doing 10, 15 million that now is being looked at by PE or bought out or whatever it might be.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I would say probably 20% of my clients have been bought out by private equity at this point.
So you would, what would be the percentage of HVAC contractors of your business? Because you do other things. You do corporate events. You do all sorts of different things. I mean, you can basically do anything.
So vehicle wraps in general make up probably about 60, 65% of our business.
Wow. Okay.
And then, the other stuff, obviously, that we do, like the posters and all the wide format printing work, whatever it might be, makes up the rest with design as well. And within all the vehicle wraps that we do, I would say 90% is home service, and probably 75% of that total is HVAC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, what would you see in the last how many years that's grown? Is it 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
The last 4 or 5 years, I've seen
big.
tremendous growth.
Yeah.
Tremendous growth.
Amazing.
Now, I'm also working with companies that are rebranded by one particular agency that has proven results. So, I can't really speak for the rest of the industry within that, but from what I see, pretty much everybody that we work with has grown. So, I try to tell them from the beginning, listen, we want to be your partner, we want to grow with you.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done essentially at this
Well,
point.
if people are going to invest that kind of money into rebranding, they're eager to grow. They're not going to invest it for no reason.
Big investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a really difficult choice. Looking at it from my end, let's say you have 20 vehicles and you're averaging 5,000-6,000 a vehicle just for that. The rebrand itself might be 25 to 50,000, another 25 to 50,000 on a website, apparel for all your guys, business cards, letterhead, everything. I mean, could easily be a $250,000 investment or more.
For a certain size company.
Yeah, for let's say a $5 to $8 million company.
Wow.
So that's a big chunk of money to lay out with it. But home service in general, what I am seeing and a big trend with it, it's not just HVAC anymore.
Right.
HVAC, plumbing, electrical,
Right.
true home service.
Right.
They'll come in, fix your faucet, not just do your maintenance on your boiler.
Right.
So I see a lot of expansion from there, and that's what I seem to notice the most, that
No, it's
people are
interesting.
able to generate revenue.
Yeah.
You're in these homes, you have a good reputation already, hopefully.
Yeah.
So you can leverage that and say, hey, you know us, you've worked with us for years, and we now offer this.
Right.
And when the time comes, please keep us in mind.
Well, that's the whole mindset of what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it all circles back to the fact of we can grow more than we are now, but we need the help and we need the right guys to grow. Because my biggest fear has always been, you know, we market and we tell customers we could do X, Y, and Z. You need to do X, Y, and Z. You can't just do X and Y because you're going to fall on your face and waste all that money in the marketing span and everything else. So I think, like I said, our focus right now is obviously we still market and whatever else, but to get new blood in this industry, in every industry, you know, and
Yeah.
then you have the right people, and then it's no one, because almost like sometimes you'll talk to a customer and say, you know, kind of this is what we're dealing with right now. Everyone's on the same page, like, yeah, I know, but why? That needs to go away.
Yeah.
You know, like it needs to be like, no, you're got to be accountable here. You know, so let's figure this out. Let's get guys that are accountable and do it right. You know,
Every
so,
single business says the same exact thing now.
yeah.
How is it possible? It's not like, all right, well, all these guys are going into a certain industry because there's a little bit more money in it, or they can make money quicker.
Right.
It's everything. It doesn't matter if it's a deli, a restaurant,
I took
home
Ainsley
service.
to the pediatrician last week, Dr. George. He's got a great reputation on Long Island. So I don't even know if you take your kids there, but I'm talking. You make friends with your doctors because
Yeah,
the
of
kids are
course.
sick all the time. It's just, so I talked to him about it, and I talked to him about him coming in for a podcast and having this discussion, and I'm like, how do you see it in your industry? He goes, I couldn't tell you more stories about different things where he goes, because it's not just the doctors. He says, when I was a doctor, I run and when your customer has a sick kid, they got to get in. He was working for a place where they would make him wait a week to get an appointment. Like Ainsley, my daughter needs to go to ENT. It was 3 months to get an appointment. I had to make a phone call to a friend to get it in, but it's not how it should be. So the way things are going it's not in a good direction. So even on a medical standpoint, which is like you think like that's like the top tier, they're having issues too. So it needs to go from the bottom up or the top down, and this needs to be talked about more.
Medicine is interesting because of what's changed. It used to be these, essentially mom and pop doctor's office, right? So growing up, my pediatrician, even my regular family physician up until a few years ago was kind of a smaller office. Now everything's being taken over by the majors, the Northwell, the Stony Brook, whatever it might be. And now they're all being taken in. They're all their appointment offices. Everything is going through corporate. They're structuring and they're
No
creating
one is
this model.
seeing that this is a concern. So it's doctors, it's vets, it's dentist practices, it's the oil companies, right? Gas companies, now HVAC.
Yeah.
So and people were just giving it up, and now it's going to be run, and it's going to be the only way things go. And it's not good.
Yeah. What it's doing is creating this divide, and it's disheartening people from also starting their own business and getting going, because if you look at it and you're like, all right, well,
Well,
I've
you
always
can't compete.
there's people that have dreams of maybe being a family physician. Hey, I want to help people, but this is kind of something I've always admired. I want to do. You have this dream of going to med school, but it's not like, all right, start now my own little small practice, get out of med school, work for somebody for a few years, start this practice. Like, that can't happen.
Right.
There's no way. And just like I was talking to my doctor about it, and I just had a physical last week, and I was mentioning that and talking about he's part of this big office now where he used to be a little doctor with a PA or two and this small town office. And he said, I had no choice. He's like, everybody's going, there comes a point, even though I wanted to resist, I held off as long as I could. They're doing things on such an efficient scale, and insurance companies are only working with them. And
Well, that's the thing.
I had no choice. I had to join. If you can't beat them, join them type of thing.
Yeah.
It's like I had no choice in it.
Yeah. Well, that's why Ray always says the lawyers and the insurance agencies are the biggest buildings in Manhattan, because they just, we just got our renewal for our construction.
Yeah.
It doubled.
Yeah.
but it doubled from 12 grand, so now 24,000 for the year. It's just, you know, and it's like, you know, you have a partner in business, and you don't realize until that bill comes in.
Yeah.
And then we go into talking about, you know, the whole different things of cost of doing business and why things cost of. But at the end of the day, it all trickles down to the consumer, which we are still a consumer as well. We're not just business owners.
Yeah, and listen, it also is difficult even as we see these increases, and I think the last year has proven this more than anything in our business with all of our expenses going up, right? So obviously you own your building now, but no matter what, you still have expenses associated with your building. You have utilities, you have payroll, you have, you know, obviously your salaries on payroll, you have your insurance, workers' comp liability, vehicle insurance, whatever it might be, even down to vehicle maintenance, preventative maintenance, and the cost of an oil change, how it changed in the past year or two.
Yeah.
Now, all these things affect you, and let's say your expenses go up 25% or 30%, you can't go and just raise your customers' prices 30%. So you wind up taking a little bit of a hit. Like maybe you can go up 10, 15% or slowly increase with stuff.
Yeah.
But you wind up making less money because now you're paying more, but you can't, you know, consciously be able to give these increases to
you
your
fight it for as
clients
long as you
either.
can. But what happens is the guys who fight it end up getting hurt because if you wait too long, you're out.
Yeah.
If you don't raise your price eventually, you could get in real trouble. If you don't got a line of credit or something ready to go, like I'll be totally honest, like right now it's 60-degree winter. We're in the heating business. I'm gonna probably have to go on a line of credit because I haven't laid anybody off. But we're not putting the numbers up that we should be putting up in February.
Yeah.
It sucks. It is, you know, it's just business, you know. But now what happens is you get busy in June, July with air conditioning, and everyone will say, "Oh, he's making a lot of money." No, I'm making that money. That's got to pay back the shitty February that I had, and I don't think people understand that. If everyone owned a business at one point in their life, they would understand, but that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if everyone, why we are here telling the story and discussing this, people need to know that that's really the reality of business.
Yeah,
know,
and
everyone sees the great times and you always must be making money hand over fist, but no one sees the struggle to get there. And then once you're there, going through the hard months.
yeah, and it's easy to get blindsided when you do have, you know, you had a couple years in a row that you had very frigid winters and pipes bursting all over the place, and you helped me out in my own places.
Yeah.
You know, coming in when we had no heat and getting us started and everything. So, you know, you went through that, and then you had good years, and then all of a sudden you have something kind of out of your control.
Yeah.
But this could be anything. This could be COVID. This could be
it's a million
a recession. There's a million factors that go into it. So you could run into this, and you have to realize, you had some good times, and you know you worked hard, and you deserve to eat off of that.
Yeah.
But you also know, as a business owner, this can kind of disappear at any time.
Well,
And
so
what
you
will I have
squirrel
to
it away.
do? Whether it's putting, you know, whether you have a line of credit or taking some of your personal savings and now bringing it back, and putting it in there, not laying guys off, not wanting to do that, and dealing with the repercussions of then possibly losing them permanently or whatever it might be. So it's a difficult thing owning a business, man. And as you get bigger, the biggest challenge that I've found is that now it's not like, all right, you have a bad month or two and you just have a few people. All right, it's whatever, 25 grand in expenses and you got to cover it, but
payroll for the
but you
week.
have 150 grand in the bank, so it wasn't a big killer.
Right.
Now, with a bigger company like yours and kind of where I'm headed, your expenses just for the week and payroll, but you know, monthly nut might be 200 grand, 250 grand.
Right.
Where it's a big thing to try to recover from.
Yeah.
If you don't make that and you fall behind.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to recover.
It's important to kind of see it coming too, which is,
Yeah.
you know, because like I said, when everything's good with a business, you know, you're always focused on the customer's relationship, the customer satisfaction at all costs, make the customer happy. And, you know, there's lines that, you know, fine line there, obviously, because you don't want customers taking advantage of you either.
Yep.
But you kind of lose track of like, hey, that job that should have took 8 hours took 10. And you do that 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times a week during the strong months. When we now get into the drier months, all that extra time is money lost that should be in the bank to go for the dry months.
Exactly.
So like I have meetings with my management. I guess you can call them management now. I have 2 supervisors, Matt and Ed. You know, so between the 5 of us, we sit down and we kind of like, hey, listen, you know, it's a little bit of a dry winter because it's not cold, but what we're saying now, what we're talking about now, and the systems that we have in place now, they have to stay constant 12 months a year. It can't just be a worry when we're slow. If we keep this system the way it is for 12 months out of the year, we'll be more profitable without having to charge the customer more money, and then we won't worry about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard to be disciplined in that. I'm sure you get like crazy busy, like, whatever. It took them extra time. We made money on it. We're okay.
Yeah, we're still covered. You deal
Exactly.
with it. Had to ship something out next day air or whatever. You kind of
Yes.
deal with it.
Yeah.
And that is the cost of doing business and understanding that there are going to be some things that are a little bit out of your control or maybe you didn't account for. But you have to look at it from your experience and say, hey, this is a real possibility of stuff, and you need to make sure that you're covered for that.
Yeah.
In general. So we're pretty lucky where we deal with a pretty premium client.
Right.
And they respect what we do, and
You
we
deal
know
with other businesses a lot of, right?
Yeah.
So they understand a little more.
So they understand a little more. They're willing to pay a little bit of a premium for what we're doing, and we're definitely the more expensive company
Right.
with everything. But they also know the service they're getting from from hearing it from other people and understanding.
Right.
You know what? I want to keep my business running. I don't want to deal with this shit. They'll deal with it. They'll make it happen. So that's how we kind of secure a lot of the business from that.
No, that's good.
But it's a tough thing, and then even during a slow time, it's easy to just kind of fuck off a little bit, right? Like, oh, it's a little slow, you deal with it. But you need to use those slow times to improve.
Yeah. Get
So
your systems
what
back
can we
in
do
place.
during these slow times? These guys are kind of finishing up early, it's not that busy. All right, well, let's do, we just started something called Teaching Tuesdays in our
Training.
office. So little training things and everywhere, specifically in design, they're going through little trainings and our
You do
senior
it during
designer-
hours or after work?
No, we do it during hours.
Okay.
Where they just take an hour or two and they go through one specific method. Hey, we're going to take this photo and we're going to Photoshop it for whatever editing purposes. Here's different ways of doing it. Now we want everybody to go take this and try it on their own. So, learning different methods to something or learning a little bit of a different method.
Right.
And then implementing it. So everybody kind of learns, progresses, grows
Right.
with that.
No, that's
so we're
good.
trying to use that.
You're reinvesting time and money into building a
Yeah,
better-
yeah, and then what I'm trying to do, and this year specifically, I'm not trying to grow anymore from a sales perspective. I'm pretty happy where I am, but what we need to do is get more efficient in what we're doing and get better at what we're doing. So how, just like you said, the guys are spending 10 hours on a job that should be 8 hours. What do we need to do to get everything organized and set everything up so it's a well-oiled machine?
Yeah.
All right, how can we do this efficiently? And
Do
keep
your
it
guys
going?
work in teams, or they basically kind of work on their own, or?
So we kind of have, our levels. So we have ownership, me and my partner Lee, and then we have managers. So we have basically a general manager,
Right.
Who's Mariah,
Right.
and then we have a production manager, and we have a design manager, our senior designer. So we kind of have three managers that run things. So everything goes through them, and then from there they have their own little team. So regarding like installation, we have like little teams of everything.
Right.
But everybody kind of works individual, but together as a unit.
Right.
So we come together at times when we need to discuss certain things. But from a design perspective, they'll work independently overall. We just added somebody else into the project management of the fleet work, the vehicle rep work.
Okay.
So now I have two people that are just dedicated to managing those projects and keep that moving. And they're working together right now. But really one of them is just kind of training, although he has a lot of experience. He's training in the way that we work.
Right.
And I suspect that we will start dividing that out a little bit where they kind of have their own accounts. And this is something on my end that I'm growing into, and I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Right.
I kind of have a vision on what I see, but I'm also looking to mentors and to people that have done this and are in my industry that have grown.
Right.
And trying to reach out to them and try to get some advice and see what their thoughts are. Luckily, there are some people in my industry that are willing to do that and provide that mentorship.
Good.
But I'm always growing in that sense too. I don't know what I'm doing until I do it sometimes.
Yeah. Becoming more efficient is definitely
Yeah, but-
definitely been a struggle.
Yeah, working correctly, less mistakes. And it's not just, all right, make a mistake and reprint it. No, why is this mistake happening?
How
Let's
much
take
does
a
that
look at
mistake
it.
cost to reprint?
Let's take a look at it. Why is this mistake happening?
Yeah. Let's make
How
sure
can
it
we
doesn't
correct
happen
it so it
again.
doesn't happen again and putting
Right.
the pieces in place?
Right.
But you can only have so much redundancy for checking things and double checking and triple checking
Right.
because that starts slowing down progress as well.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to pay for all that redundancy, pay for all that double, triple, quadruple checking of everything.
Yeah. How long would you say it takes from getting someone who's like green, and when I say green, I mean knows nothing about what your industry is, to getting them to be making money for the company? How long of an investment was that?
On which end?
Time frame.
On
Let's
like
just say,
the installer end, design end, project management end.
On all, so we'll go through. I mean, on the install end, how long do you think?
So on the install end, somebody starting green, coming in, kind of knowing nothing, just having an interest in it.
Right.
We actually have a program. We get people all the time. Oh, I'm a vehicle wrap installer. I'm a rapper. You know, it's kind of like this new like trendy thing to do.
Right.
So we actually have them come in, and I start them off not at minimum wage, but a fairly low rate, and I make them go through 6 months of production first.
Okay.
Show me you're dedicated.
Right.
Earn the position that I want to train you
Right.
for rapping. Once they get into it, I would say 3 to 6 months they're getting decent, but still have to work with somebody. 6 to 12 months they can really become a little bit more efficient,
Okay.
assuming that they really take an interest and are intelligent and can utilize all the training that they get to work properly.
So about up to a year, you'd say?
Yeah, I would say up to a year.
So
So,
for
so
a
I'm
year,
losing money for probably
year.
a year, 6 months to a year.
Yeah. No,
on
that's-
on that.
And now, what would you say your conversion rate is to keeping that person? Do they stay 6 months and leave? Do they stay 3 months?
We
and
don't
leave?
have a high level of turnover.
Okay.
Although this is something similar in your industry with techs installers.
Right, but now the question to better ask it is, it's not so much the turnover from what they want to do. Is it get to a point where some of these guys, they get to a point where, hey, they've been here for a year, they're still making the same mistakes. I've put all my time and effort into coaching. I've gone over things. They just don't have it. Like, when do you, like, how often do you get that?
So, essentially you're kind of talking about dead weight, right? So, you get people and maybe you envision them being able to get here, but they've only made it here. So you have two choices. You could say, all right, listen, I only want greatness.
Right.
This is what I demand, and I won't stand for anything less.
Right.
Or you take people for what they are, and you realize if they're putting the effort in, but they only have this particular ability, whether it's a raw talent, whether it's an intelligence,
Right.
problem solving, whatever it is, you take it for what they are. Listen, you're not going to get that same raise that somebody else might get that is kind of providing that greatness.
Right.
But you need to look at a company, say, can I utilize this person properly?
how
Are
many of
they
those can you have?
enjoyable to be around? Is it that kind of person that cheers everybody up, is great on the phone? Because maybe they have some other talents in there. And that has happened where we've pulled people from one part and put them in a different part of the
Or
business.
try this,
and
yeah.
it's worked out well. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we pull them and it doesn't work there, doesn't work there. Hey, we got to break this relationship cleanly. Unfortunately, it's not working out. I haven't ran into a ton of that, and we try really hard to work with people and make sure that we hold up our end of the bargain also. With training them and having them understand their job, not overwhelming them. But you run into this. We had somebody that's like, "Oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed." I said, "There's a difference between being overwhelmed and just busy at work. Like, you come here to work,
Right.
right? You have a list of stuff. Guess what? That list is never going to end. Hopefully,
No.
right? You're going to continue on that list.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be overwhelming. It should just be, all right. Let me
One thing at a time.
organize this. What is priority? Where do I have to go? And start working your way through it.
Right.
But that term overwhelmed kind of gets to me.
Yeah. Frank, did you have a question?
No, not at the present time.